Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked on Wolves. Today on the show, this is the post-game podcast, and it's another post-game pod following a blowout loss. The Wolves were beat easily by the Suns on Wednesday by 12 in the final score, but it wasn't really that close. We'll talk about what the issues were once again, what has to change immediately. We'll talk individual studs and the duds, all of it upcoming on the show. Welcome in. You are Locked on Wolves.
You are Locked on Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Thursday, everybody. And this is not a victory Thursday after another disappointing loss. First of all, though, before we get to the nitty-gritty, a big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also watch the show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app, a brand new app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. More great local sports coverage 24/7. It's absolutely free. Again, the Locked On Sports Minnesota app. Locked on Wolves, Locked on Twins, Locked on Golden Gophers, Vikings, Wild, you name it, it's there. You can find it on Roku or the Amazon Fire TV app. Plus, you can follow the show on Twitter, of course, at Locked on T-Wolves, or my account, which is at Beecken. That's with two B's, two E's, C-K-E-N. All right, so the Wolves lost on Monday to the Knicks, and it was horrible. They lost on Wednesday to the Suns, and it was a lot of the same. If you didn't watch the game, you'd see the final box score, see they lost by 12 and think, well, they put up a fight. Last week in Phoenix, last Tuesday, they only lost by 9, and I felt like they did put up a fight in that game. That's not what happened on Wednesday night at Target Center. The Wolves gave up 39 in the first quarter, 69 in the first half, and the Suns had 101 points with just over 2 minutes to play in the third quarter. This was, in my mind, primarily a defensive breakdown for the Wolves. It's not the only thing that was the issue, but that's my number one takeaway from this game was a lack of defensive effort, missed rotations. Last year, we praised the Wolves' aggressiveness on defense, the ability that they had to, X out on the perimeter, to contest shots on the closest possible, the closest possible defenders contesting shots, Xing out to the corner to make sure that like there's essentially a scramble drill all the time, right? And that's what last year's defense was. It was far from perfect. It's why it struggled at the end of the year. There was just a lot of scrambling because they were playing a blitzing pick and roll coverage. Guys were always rushing the ball, essentially, playing high wall coverage. And then you had guys recovering to guard each other's guys, cover each other. But it necessitated that aggressiveness, that want to, right? It had to happen. It's almost as if this team's looked around and was like, oh, we have Rudy Gobert now. As I've said on the show, he's a walking top 10 defense, right? So maybe he's going to cover all of us. We don't need to worry about hustling as much on defense, or we don't need to worry about, closing out under control and not letting guys drive right past us. I don't know, but like that's surely what it seems like. Finch hates switching on defense. The Wolves are doing more of that. He also does not like playing zone. I mean, like it's not a winning strategy with any like real staying power at the NBA level. And the Wolves are playing way more zone the last couple of games than they had at any point last year. And they don't understand how to play it. Like there's no other plausible explanation for why there were a couple of plays where the Suns, there was nobody within 8 feet of them. There was one where D'Angelo Russell picked up whoever had the ball at the top of the key for the Suns. This was first half. And he picked up the ball, went to help to kind of trap right at the elbow, which was weird. I don't know why he did that in the first place, but it left the opposite wing, the slot completely open. And the Suns ended up getting a 3. Nobody ran out to contest. There were multiple uncontested 3s where there were like 2 guys that were like, I passed him off to you. You're not contesting, not my guy anymore. And the other guy's like, well, that's, you should be. And nobody's contesting the shot. That happened multiple times. There was a possession, and you may have seen this on social media, probably, where D'Angelo Russell just forgot to check into the game and was standing at the scorer's table. The Wolves played an entire possession 4-on-5. Now, I say that because it was hilarious if you're not a Wolves fan. I guess it's funny regardless. D'Lo actually was not the number one culprit in this game. He actually, I thought, played pretty hard defensively. There were a couple of plays, and if you're a regular listener, I am hard on D'Lo when I need to be hard on D'Lo, and he didn't have a great game by any stretch. But he actually, like, there were multiple plays. There's one play in particular in the second half when Anthony Edwards was, or no, second half. Uh, this was no, it was first half, I guess. Anthony Edwards thought he got fouled under the basket, stood back and complained, and D'Angelo Russell went on a dead sprint from the corner all the way down the floor, picked up the ball, caught up to the ball in the paint. I don't think he did anything productive with the defensive possession, but it was as like D'Lo was busting it. Like he was trying in that moment. And like there were moments like that where there were 2, 3 guys that played hard, but the rest of the team did not really. And that goes along with effort, defensive effort, missed assignments, missed rotations. That was the number one issue. And I think effort it's both ends of the floor, but defensively it was more obvious. On offense, the biggest issue continues to be a lack of chemistry. And yeah, part of that's still introducing Rudy Gobert to the team. Yeah, that's part of it. He didn't play Monday, and the offensive chemistry wasn't good then either. So, like, it's not Rudy's fault. If anyone wanted to think that after they beat Houston on Saturday, no, it turns out they just played the Rockets. But like, the offensive chemistry was miserable. The number of live ball turnovers the Suns had, or the Suns were able to gather and go score. The Wolves committed 19 turnovers in this game to Phoenix's 11. Phoenix had, I think it was 31 points off turnovers in this game. It was just unbelievable how many live ball turnovers. There weren't very many dead ball turnovers, not very many balls thrown out of bounds, not very many, travel, step on the end line. It was far more live ball turnovers, middle of the floor. Jaylen Noel had 7 of the Wolves' 19, and he actually played pretty well in the first half. He was like the Wolves' offense in the second quarter. But he finished with 7 turnovers and 3 assists off the bench. He played a lot of point guard. There were some interesting rotations in this game. Jordan McLaughlin only played 7 minutes. Also, Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns both picked up 3 personal fouls in the first quarter. And so the Wolves played a tiny lineup with Jaden McDaniels and Kyle Anderson in the front court with no Naz Reid. Naz Reid was a late scratch due to illness. And that meant that they played small. And then Nate Knight got a 5-minute stint in the second quarter that was just fine. It wasn't great. So weird rotations, partly out of necessity, and guys playing roles they don't typically play. I supported play Noel a bit more at the point guard spot. This wasn't really a game. I mean, the Wolves were sloppy offensively, yes, but they were trying to. I mean, Phoenix, especially with no Chris Paul, like this is a team that had, a fair amount of length in the backcourt. I understand why Chris Finch went Noel instead of McLaughlin and had Kyle Anderson try to initiate some offense and Taurean Prince to a lesser extent. This was just. It goes back to effort. Both ends of the floor. Defensively, it's more obvious. Offensively, it's more about sloppiness than anything else. I want to call it a couple of individual players because, we got to do that. We do that here next, plus a couple of other takeaways. I do have multiple additional takeaways from this game, and what happens. This is a topic for Friday's show. But what happens on Friday in Memphis? Like, if things are just going to get worse and worse and worse. If there is a stop put to some of this lackadaisical effort at best. So we're going to do all that. We'll do individual studs and duds. First, though, let's talk about our friends over at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's extremely easy. You simply post the job on LinkedIn, and then you add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's time to finish the year strong. We're only like 7 weeks away from the end of the calendar year. The right team member just might help you do that. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen today. Now, for your second listen, go check out the Locked On Sports Today show. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights that only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Okay, additional takeaways from this one. Talked about foul trouble. That was an issue early with no Naz Reid. The damage had kind of already been done in this one by the time that Cat and Rudy were able to get back in the game in the second quarter. They're already done double figures at that point. So we talked about that. We talked about the disjointed offense. Let's talk about Anthony Edwards. This is a carbon copy. This was a carbon copy of the last several games for Ant. In fact, let's do this right now. I didn't actually look at that. I was just going to talk about Ant's game individually, but after saying that out loud, like, hey, let's look at his game log because it's not pretty. Ant hasn't scored over 20 points since last Friday against Milwaukee. So over the last 3 games, he has scored under 20 points. 4 of 12 shooting in this one, which is 33%. 5 of 14 on Monday against the Knicks. That's 35%. He was 7 of 13 against Houston. That was a win. He played fairly well. Only had 19 points, but he only played 33 minutes. He did have 24 against Milwaukee. He played okay. He had 24 against Phoenix, but it came on 21 shots last week. Go back the game before that, 7 of 18. That was at San Antonio. That was that horrible loss on that Sunday against the Spurs. And that was a 7 of 18 performance. And then a couple games before that, it was the even worse loss against San Antonio, where he shot 3 of 15 with 9 points scored. So he scored 9 points on 3 of 15 in that game, 11 points on 4 of 12 in this game, 16 points last time out on 5 of 14. And this time, he didn't have much else to show for it either. He only had 3 rebounds. He did have 6 assists in this game, but he had the ball in his hands a ton, just trying to force the issue and make things happen. But not in a good way. Like, not in a way that makes sense. Not in the flow of the offense, right? It was just Ant kind of trying to take the bull by the horns. He had a couple, he had one dunk where it was like, okay, he's going to try and get going. And then sure enough, he comes down. And the Suns knew what he was doing. They knew he was going to try and go ISO, not in the flow of the offense. He would just bring the ball up the floor himself, go ISO. So they loaded up on him, right? They essentially had not brought a full double team on the perimeter, but had somebody shadowing him in a sense to double inside the arc. And they loaded up. They knew he wasn't wanting to pass the ball. And Ant was either going to throw it away, trying to throw a skip past the opposite side of the floor. Or he was going to, make the short pass to somebody that they could easily recover and guard a perimeter jump shooter there. So another disappointing game for Ant. More needs to happen with Anthony Edwards. He's got to do more. If he wants to be, a top 25 player, if he wants to be an all-star, he's playing nowhere near that level right now. He's been honestly one of the Wolves' worst players over the last couple of weeks in terms of what their role is and what he's providing, right? Yes, he's scoring. It's high volume scoring. He's also turning the ball over. He's also not consistently rebounding or assisting, even though both those numbers I think are in decent spots compared to where they have been the first 2 years of his career in terms of rebound rate and assist rate. He's not shooting the ball well from the perimeter either. 0 of 4 in this game, 1 of 7 last game. So 1 of his last 11 from 3. And on the season, he's 34%? Which that number, again, had looked okay until the last couple of games. But shot selection, for instance, this actually brings me to my next point. I wanted to talk about how the Wolves suddenly decided to play hard when they were down, 27 at one point. And then in the start of the fourth quarter, they were still down 21. They got the game to around 15 points, or it was 15 points with around 5 minutes to play, I should say. And there were a couple of misses in the paint. Ant missed a lefty layup, and then Rudy missed 2 tip-in opportunities. And then Suns don't score next time down, so it's still 15 points. And then Jaden McDaniels misses an open 3 in the corner, a completely wide open 3 that was a great opportunity. And then down 13 with 4 minutes to play, they get it down to 11 with 3 minutes away. So 3 minutes to play. So chipping away a basket at a time, right? 2 points every minute, essentially. But down 11 to 3 to play isn't completely insurmountable. It's unlikely, but it's within the realm of possibilities that the Wolves could come back in that. But then the Wolves come down. Ant, I think it was a no pass possession, or maybe D'Lo passed it to Ant initially, and he took a tough 3 early in the shot clock, missed, and that was it. I think they got it to 9 with 2 to play, but at that point, who cares? That three would have cut it to 8 with about 3 minutes to play. That's just a 3-possession game, and you don't need to foul. You get a stop, you score, you get a stop, and it's a 1-possession game. Um, or 2-possession game with a chance to score with the ball, right? So if Ant makes that shot or just takes a better shot, or the Wolves actually run some offense, we're talking about a different, perhaps we're talking differently about at least the end of this game. So that was 2 points in one. That's Ant struggling, and then the Wolves finally showing the urgency late in the game. Too little, too late. That whole thing, which is not, the Wolves are no stranger to that so far this year. But Ant was a culprit late, missing that lefty layup, missing the 3-point opportunity there, the 3-pointer from the left wing down 11 with 3 to play. So disappointing close to the game for the Wolves, disappointing close for Ant. I also want to point out on a positive note just how good Jaden McDaniels was. I thought he was by far the Wolves' best player in this game. It wasn't particularly close. I mean, there were moments. Cat had moments. Cat finished with just 11 and 8 with 4 assists, but the foul trouble, the incessant complaining to the officials, which the officials didn't have a great night tonight, but it was too much. Cat only got 7 shots up, not entirely his fault, but like he had some good moments. Jalen Newell had good moments in the first half. Rudy had some good moments late. I mean, Rudy finished with 25 and 11, but man, a lot of that was during that fruitless comeback in the fourth quarter. Jaden McDaniels was the Wolves' best player in this game. 24 points, 8 rebounds. Awesome to see him get 8 rebounds. Marnie Gellner said on the live postcast following the game, that 24 is Jaden McDaniels' career high, which surprised me a little. I thought he had a couple games in the mid-20s last year, and opening night this year, I guess it was 22 or 23 points. But he had 24 points on 14 shots, 10 of 14 shooting, 2 of 4 on threes, 2 of 3 at the line, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and a block, only 2 turnovers. Was a +8, one of 2 positive players in plus minus for the Wolves. Cat was the other at a +4. +8 in a game the Wolves lost by 12, and Jaden McDaniels played 38 minutes. That means, this is inexact. It's not an exact science to talk plus minus this way, but individual plus minus is plenty noisy anyway, so let's go there. McDaniels was a +8 in 38 minutes, and the Wolves lost by 12 in a 48-minute game. That means that with Jaden McDaniels off the floor in this game, the Wolves were a -20. That's hard to believe. They were a -20 in 10 minutes with no Jaden McDaniels and a +8 with Jaden McDaniels on the floor. And he didn't commit a foul until the fourth quarter. This is coming on the heels of a foul out in 17 minutes on Monday. Plenty of other foul trouble this season. Didn't commit a foul until the fourth, was a +8 in 38 minutes in a game they lost by 12. If Jaden McDaniels plays like this, the Wolves, hey, I mean, Cat's not going to have 11 points on 7 shots every night. Ant will eventually figure something out. And again, D'Lo was okay in this one. He was better. He hit 4 threes. He scored 20 points. If the Wolves could kind of figure things out as a team defensively and be not so sloppy on offense, like Jaden McDaniels, this is has to be one of his best 3-4 games of his career. Was really, really good. Fun to watch when he's playing this way and when he's cautious defensively as well. But at any rate, to put a bow on the takeaways, defensive effort, brutal. Offense, extremely sloppy. 19 turnovers, lots of live ball turnovers. The Suns scored 30-ish points off of turnovers from the Wolves. Those are the 2 biggest things. Also, Ant struggles once again. The late game urgency just coming far too late. And then obviously the lack of depth with no Naz Reid, with the foul trouble to Rudy and Cat, which is the exact situation you need Naz Reid. But unfortunately, he was a late scratch due to injury in this one. All right. I want to close the show by talking individual studs and duds, who played well for the Wolves and who did not. We're going to do that here next. All right, individual studs and duds to close the show. Obviously, studs. We talked Jaden McDaniels already. 24 and 8 for him, plus 3 assists and a block. 10 of 14 shooting. 2 made threes on 4 tries. 2 of 3 at the line. He was fantastic. Don't need to say much more about him. I'm going to give a stud to D'Angelo Russell. He played pretty well in this game. Again, sloppy offense in general. He was not the main culprit necessarily. I thought Ant was much worse offensively. There's no question about that. I thought Cat was a little bit more all over the place than we've seen of late from him. The bench was not good in terms of taking care of the basketball. D'Lo had 20 points, 6 assists in this game, 6 of 14 shooting, 4 of 9 outside the arc. He was 4 of 4 at the line, 20 and 6 plus 2 rebounds. He did have 3 turnovers, but D'Lo was pretty good. I was happy to see him shoot the ball confidently. He made the Wolves' first basket of the game. He made a 3. He made a couple late. I thought he was consistent and he was good. So good game from D'Lo. So D'Lo and Jaden McDaniels are 2 of the studs. I'm going to give one to Rudy. The foul trouble wasn't great. I thought he played well around the basket. He did get to the line 11 times, picked up a couple nice loose ball fouls on the glass when the Suns were in the penalty. So he scored 9 of his 25 points at the line. But hey, he shot 9 of 11 on free throws, which was nice to see. 8 of 11 from the floor, 25 and 11, 3 blocks for Rudy, and just 1 turnover in 30 minutes. Lots of quote unquote garbage time points. I mean, the Wolves were technically still kind of threatening there in the fourth quarter, so it wasn't completely pointless, but a lot of the damage was done late. Still, not a whole lot else to choose from in terms of players who played well for the Wolves. So I'll give that stud to Rudy. So J-Mac, Big J-Mac, McDaniels, Rudy, and D'Lo all get studs. We talked to Anthony Edwards. You know he's getting a dud in this game. I don't care that he had 6 assists. He shot 4-12, 0-4 outside the arc, was only 3 of 6 at the free throw line. For all the whining he was doing about the lack of foul calls, he sure wasn't shooting his free throws very well. And, you know, he's right a lot of the time. Like, he oftentimes does not get the fouls he should get in the paint, but he wasn't right all the time in this game. And he complained on every single play, and it detracted from him defensively. It's the same thing we've seen Cat do year after year after year. But I think it's more obvious with Ant now, because he's just generally not playing well. When Cat was complaining, he at least was still playing well and was an efficient offensive player, even if it was obnoxious and again, detracted from the team defensively, from the team's performance, because he would just complain and not get back on defense. But with Ant, he's not playing well. He's not making shots. He's not playing well defensively right now. So it's just magnified that much greater. So he's a dud in this one. I'm also going to give one to Taurean Prince, which is weird. Like, he's been so good so far this year, and I don't know, but he did not have an impact. He had a chance to. There were a couple of kind of like mid-range shots he typically feels like he could make in the second quarter when the Wolves were kind of hanging around that 9, 10, 12 point deficit. And then again in the third when they were trying to make a push towards the end of the third. Prince just had a few shots he typically makes that he didn't do much defensively, was not helpful when he was on Devin Booker. In 19 minutes, he was a minus 22, by far the worst mark on the Wolves. 2 of 6 shooting, missed his only 3-point attempt, only had 1 rebound in 19 minutes, no assists, no steals, no blocks, no offensive rebounds, 4 points on 6 shots in 19 minutes for TP. So he and Ant are the 2 duds for this one. All right. Mercifully, this homestand is over. As weird as that is to say, but to get away from the booze at Target Center, they played 4 in a row at home, losing 3 out of 4. And I said this off the top of the show. Did I say this or did I only say it on the postcast? I don't know that I said this off the top. The Wolves have now lost 3 out of 4 by double figures. They've lost 5 out of 6 overall, and all 5 of those losses have been by 9 or more points. And they really haven't been competitive in any of their losses since that overtime loss to Utah on the first Friday night of the season, which it'll be 3 weeks ago Friday, was the last time they lost in a close game. Their other losses have all been 9 point. Actually, every single loss besides that one was a 9-point or greater loss. And a couple of those were not as close as they looked, like that first San Antonio game or even the second loss to San Antonio. I think the Phoenix loss wasn't horrible. The Milwaukee loss was okay. They lost by 13, but then the Knicks lost and the Suns lost. The Wolves weren't really. They should have lost by more than 13 to the Knicks on Monday. They should have lost by more than 12 to the Suns in this one. But next up, they're at Memphis, ESPN game, so late start, 8:30 p.m. tip at Memphis Friday night. Then they go to Cleveland for a 5 p.m. Central tip on Sunday. So 2 very tough games this weekend. On Friday, we'll preview the Memphis game mostly. We'll spend a little bit of time on Cleveland since we won't have another show before then. So we'll talk what to expect Friday and Sunday with Memphis and Cleveland on the schedule. We'll, of course, do live postcasts as we always do with Marty Gellner. Those are live 45 minutes after the final buzzer. And those go live on Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube And then we post them on the Locked On Wolves feed after the fact as well. So right now, if you want to go back and listen to my conversation with Marnie, you can do that. It's the episode before the one you're listening to now on the Locked On Wolves audio feed. Big thank you again to those of you that do make Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. It's greatly appreciated, especially when things aren't going as well for the team. We definitely appreciate you listening. Of course, the show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms and the new Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On T-Wolves and at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Thanks again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.